The front door slammed open with the kind of flair that announced drama before a word was even spoken. Lucas looked up from his tablet just in time to see Madeline stride in like royalty returning from conquest. Sun-kissed and dripping in designer, she tossed her oversized sunglasses onto the kitchen counter and dropped 2 luxury shopping bags beside the bar stools. "Thanks for the upgrade, babe," she said, flashing a grin as she unwrapped a silk scarf from her neck. Lucas didn't move. He just watched. The perfume of Balinese orchids trailed behind her like a flag-waving arrogance in the air. "You should have seen the villa," she continued, flipping her hair like she was addressing an audience. "Infinity pool, ocean view, massages every morning. Honestly, it was everything I needed to reset." She paused, waiting for him to ask questions. But when he didn't, her lips curled. "What, no welcome back? You're always so uptight about money. Figured this little trip might help you loosen up." Lucas stood slowly, his eyes cool, unreadable. "Did you enjoy yourself?" he asked. "Imbibe immensely," she beamed. "And wait until you see the watch I bought. It's insane." She turned her back and started rifling through her bag. That was when he allowed himself the faintest smirk. Not because he was impressed, but because he knew something she didn't, something she was about to find out. "You really have no idea what you've done," Lucas said softly, almost to himself. Madeline didn't hear it over the sound of her phone buzzing. Notifications, alerts, a fraud report, but not just any fraud. She had walked right into it. And the trap had already been sprung. They met at a tech conference in Denver, of all places. Lucas had been presenting on digital forensics, and Madeline was there, tagging along with a friend, wearing a wine-colored dress, and asking just the right questions to seem interested. She was magnetic, confident, flirtatious, and full of big dreams about launching her own brand one day. Lucas, always grounded and methodical, found her energy refreshing. At first, she made him laugh, pulled him out of his shell, made him feel like he could loosen the grip on structure just enough to enjoy life. They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony beneath live oaks in hill country. But almost as soon as the vows faded, the cracks began showing. Madeline bounced between business ideas, subscription boxes, a skincare line, travel blocking. Nothing stuck. Meanwhile, Lucas climbed steadily at Orion Logistics, eventually leading the company's fraud risk division. He paid the bills, set up retirement plans, and booked vacations while she flitted through moods and marketing courses. He wanted a life built on substance. She wanted spotlight and sparkle. Still, he gave her room. Let her grow, he'd tell himself, even as the credit card statements grew suspiciously bloated, and the bank alerts chimed more often than usual. He questioned her gently at first. She'd smile, kiss his cheek, and say, "Trust me, it's an investment in our future." What Lucas didn't say out loud, that felt deeper with each passing month, was that he no longer recognized the woman across the dinner table. She spoke in hashtags and ROI, in influencer metrics and wellness retreats. The intimacy faded, replaced by an algorithm of avoidance. He chalked it up to stress, to unmet expectations. But a part of him, the part that studied deception for a living, started quietly keeping track, not out of paranoia, out of instinct. He didn't want to catch her doing something wrong. He wanted to be wrong. Unfortunately, he wasn't. What he thought was a partnership had become a facade, and he was about to learn just how deep the illusion ran. It started with the soft creak of floorboards. Lucas, still awake at 1:47 a.m., sat motionless in his home office, backlit only by the glow of a muted monitor. He heard the bedroom door open, followed by cautious steps down the hall. He didn't need to guess. The moment had arrived. He had planted the decoy card days earlier, an internal asset tied to Orion's fraud simulation system, meant to train executives on detecting unauthorized use. He'd labeled it Lucas G. Business Reserve, and left it in plain sight, tucked beside a printed expense sheet. It was bait, and now the fish was circling. From the cracked office door, Lucas watched as Madeline crept in wearing one of his old hoodies, her hair tied in a loose bun. She moved quickly but clumsily, grabbing his work laptop, pulling up a browser, and opening what she thought was a travel booking site. She typed fast, booked faster, First-class flights to Bali, resort packages, a massage add-on. Then came the photos. Her phone flicked up, snapping shots of the dummy card, front and back. She even whispered the numbers aloud as she typed, double-checking every digit. Lucas didn't breathe. Didn't blink. He recorded the entire process with his phone resting on a shelf, angle perfect, time-stamped. When she finished, she softly closed the laptop, tiptoed out, and climbed back into bed like nothing had happened. Lucas followed 10 minutes later, slipping under the covers beside a woman he no longer trusted but couldn't yet confront. He lay there staring at the ceiling, heart calm, Kakowski. She thought she'd just pulled off the perfect secret trip. What she didn't know was that the moment she submitted the first charge, it triggered automated alerts to both Orion's internal risk division and a real-time monitoring dashboard tied to a law enforcement sandbox. She hadn't just stolen a card. She'd stolen a trap. And Lucas had the evidence. He didn't feel angry in that moment. He felt ready. This wasn't paranoia anymore. It was proof. And soon, the fallout would right itself. The next morning, Lucas sipped his black coffee like it was any other Wednesday. Madeline hummed in the shower upstairs, no trace of guilt in her voice as she sang along to some vacation playlist. But Lucas wasn't focused on her. He was focused on the alert that had just pinged his secure email. Transaction, $1,775.00. Mondalo, Villas Bop. The second followed within minutes, $620.00. Elite Bop, then another, $4.08, Christo Jewelers. Every notification lit up like a flare across his laptop screen, color-coded and cross-referenced with GPS pings, device IDs, and timestamps. The system he'd helped design for corporate threat monitoring was now documenting his wife's betrayal in high definition. Lucas didn't panic. He built folders. He printed logs. He cross-verified booking details with international databases. Each entry was another brick in the legal fortress he was building. She had used the decoy card on a dozen sites, none of which required ID verification. Exactly the weak spots the training simulation was built to identify. Every single purchase was being flagged and mirrored to a secure case file in real time. The irony wasn't lost on him. Madeline thought she was living out her luxury influencer fantasy, but in reality she had become a walking case study. Her own personal fraud timeline neatly collated by a man who wrote the manual on spotting it. He called Jared Lynn that afternoon. She took the bait, Lucas said calmly. Jared nearly choked on his burrito. She really used the training card? Lucas nodded, pulling up a folder labeled Madeline. Phase 1. She's booked 5-star everything, her footprints all over the system. Jared chuckled. You realize you're probably the first guy in history to catch a spouse using cybersecurity tools, right? Lucas allowed a wry smile. I didn't catch her. She caught herself. I just made sure the net was waiting. By the end of the day, Madeline had dropped over $40,000, 0 cents, and the system she had unwittingly fed was ready to bite back. All Lucas had to do now was wait, and keep watching the fall unfold in real time. The call came just after noon on Friday, while Lucas was reviewing the week's audit logs. His phone lit up with an unrecognized Washington, D.C. number, and he instinctively knew what it was. Mr. Grant, this is Agent Ramirez with the Federal Financial Crimes Unit, the voice said, clear and authoritative. We've been monitoring some unusual activity tied to a flagged account, an internal corporate training card issued under your name. Lucas leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Yes, I'm aware, he replied calmly. Do you know who's responsible for the charges? Ramirez asked. I do, Lucas answered without hesitation. My wife. There was a pause. Not judgmental, just surprised. Your wife, Ramirez repeated. Lucas explained everything. How the card was a simulation asset used in fraud detection training, how it wasn't meant for real-world transactions, and how Madeline had stolen the information in the middle of the night and used it for a luxury escape across the globe. Well, Ramirez said after a beat, that's definitely a first. You just made our job a lot easier. Within hours, Lucas was looped into a task force handling the case. All the flagged transactions were being pulled, matched to IP addresses, device fingerprints, and geolocations. Each matched perfectly with Madeline's digital footprint. The system hadn't just recorded her spree, it had built the evidence for prosecution. "We'll begin preparing a formal case," Ramirez told him. "But if I may, Mr. Grant, this is one hell of a sting." Lucas gave a small chuckle, the first real one in weeks. "It was never meant to be one," he said. But she walked straight into it. By the time the call ended, Madeline had unwittingly turned herself into the subject of a federal case. And the wheels of justice were already turning. She arrived like she was stepping onto a runway. The front door swung open mid-laptop, and in came Madeline, bronze from the sun and grinning like she'd just conquered the world. "Lucas," she called out, dragging a leopard print suitcase across the hardwood, her other hand balancing an iced latte and a clutch wrapped in a Dior ribbon. "Bali was everything. You would have hated it too, but too much relaxation." Lucas watched her from the kitchen, quiet, expression unreadable. "Thanks for the upgrade, babe," she added, plopping her new designer bag onto the counter as if it were her crown. "You really outdid yourself this time." She didn't notice the folders on the dining table labeled with her name. Didn't see the recording device tucked beneath the fruit bowl, already rolling. Instead, she launched into a full debrief of her self-care pilgrimage. 5-star dinners, rooftop bars, that one spiritual sunset cruise that she was sure changed her life. Lucas listened, nodding occasionally, his phone in hand under the table, capturing every word. "Honestly," she said between sips, "I don't know why you're always so uptight. Look how happy I am. A little spending never hurt anyone." She held up her wrist, flashing a gold watch with a sparkle. "Do you like it? Custom engraved." Lucas tilted his head, feigning interest. "It's illuminating." She laughed, oblivious. "See? I knew you'd come around." She blew him a kiss and disappeared down the hall to unpack. Lucas stayed seated, thumb hovering over the screen, where her voice had just casually confessed to tens of thousands in purchases on a card she had no right to use. He pressed save. The recording joined a growing digital dossier. She thought she'd returned to the throne. What she didn't know was that the court had already convened, and she was the case. The knock came at 6:42 p.m., crisp and purposeful. Lucas had just finished setting out 2 plates for dinner. He wasn't hungry, but appearances mattered. Madeline padded barefoot into the room, now dressed in silk pajamas and humming as she opened a bottle of rosé. "Can you get that?" she called over her shoulder, swirling the wine with a flourish. Lucas didn't answer. Instead, he calmly walked to the door and opened it wide to reveal Agent Ramirez, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Good evening, Mr. Grant," Ramirez said professionally. "Is Mrs. Madeline Grant home?" Lucas stepped aside, voice cool. "She's right inside." Madeline's humming stopped. She peeked around the corner, eyes narrowing in confusion. "What's going on?" she asked, setting the glass down. Ramirez stepped forward. "Mrs. Grant, you're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of a financial instrument. We'd like you to come with us for questioning." Her face drained of color. "What? No, this is a mistake. Lucas, tell them." She turned to him, searching for a lifeline, but he only leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Funny," he said. "I thought wives weren't supposed to steal from their husbands. Guess we're both learning something new." The officer stepped in, reading her rights. She stumbled over her words, alternating between outrage and disbelief. "You can't do this. Lucas, this is insane." He didn't flinch. "You made your choices, Madeline. Now you get to live with them." As she was escorted out, still shouting, Lucas remained at the threshold, watching the scene unfold like a final act in a play he'd written line by line. The door shut with a heavy click. Silence followed. But this wasn't the silence of confusion or grief. It was the quiet hum of justice, long overdue. The house was quiet again, but the energy had shifted. Madeline's perfume still lingered in the hallway, faint and fading, like the last note of a song that no longer played. Lucas stood at the dining table, staring at the glass of untouched rose she'd poured minutes before being led away in handcuffs. It sat there like a prop from another life. Her life, now unraveled. Over the next 48 hours, the consequences landed fast. Jared called first, voice sharp with disbelief. "She's already trying to flip the narrative," he said, "claiming you gave her permission to use the card." Lucas didn't even blink. Good thing we have her recorded bragging about it. Federal charges followed swiftly. Fraud, identity theft, unauthorized use of a financial account. The total damage? $61,400, 0 cents across international jurisdictions. Her Bali dream had become a federal case file, thicker than a fashion magazine. The influencers she idolized unfollowed her within hours of the arrest. Sponsors pulled out. Her accounts were locked, pending investigation. She called Lucas once. He didn't answer. The voicemail was a chaotic blend of rage and pleading. "You ruined me, Lucas. Please. We can fix this." But Lucas had nothing left to fix. He forwarded the message to Agent Ramirez without a second thought. That weekend, he and Jared finalized the divorce papers. The restitution clause was clear. Madeline would pay back every cent, complete 400 hours of community service, and live under the scrutiny of a damaged credit score and digital reputation. "You could have pressed for jail time," Jared noted. "You still can." Lucas shook his head. "No need. Watching her brand collapse is punishment enough." And it was. The queen of curated luxury now stood stripped of her empire, while the man she tried to manipulate walked away with everything she thought he lacked: clarity, evidence, and power. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was healing. Lucas spent the next week peeling back the layers of Madeline's presence. The rose gold candle holders, the faux fur throws, the stack of untouched brand strategy journals. Each item packed into boxes and set aside, like artifacts from someone else's life. He replaced the velvet cushions with simple, earthy tones, swapped the abstract art for framed landscapes he shot himself on hiking trips long before he met her. The condo, once a showroom of performative luxury, now felt human again. Real. His. He reclaimed his weekends, biking the Greenbelt Trail, cooking meals from scratch, reading late into the night without needing to pretend interest in things he didn't care about. He hosted a small barbecue for a few colleagues, filling the space with laughter instead of curated Instagram ambiance. No filters, no facades. On one wall in his office, he pinned a satellite photo of Bali, the exact location of the resort Madeline had charged to the decoy card. Not out of bitterness, but as a quiet reminder. A marker of the moment he stopped being blind to charm and started trusting his own instincts. The photo didn't represent pain. It represented survival. The apartment no longer echoed with her footsteps or demands. It breathed with possibility. Lucas walked from room to room, barefoot, a cup of coffee in hand, and felt it for the first time in years. Peace. The kind that doesn't need to be earned or explained, just lived in. One room, one breath, one truth at a time. One quiet evening, Lucas sat on the balcony, legs stretched out, the city glowing beneath a lavender dusk. In his hand was a glass of scotch, not for celebration, but for acknowledgement. Everything he'd endured, the betrayal, the deception, the unraveling of a marriage built on illusions, had brought him to this moment of stillness. He didn't feel victorious. Failure. For years he'd believed that love meant bending, accommodating, shrinking his instincts to keep peace. But peace without honesty, he now knew, was just silence in disguise. Madeline's fall wasn't something he rejoiced in, but her betrayal had forced him to confront a truth he'd long buried. He had always been the foundation, the provider, the protector, and it was never weakness to expect respect in return. Looking back, he didn't wish things had gone differently. He was grateful, not for what she did, but for what it taught him. As the wind brushed past, Lucas raised his glass toward the horizon. "Here's to starting over," he whispered. "No resentment, no bitterness, just freedom. The kind that's earned not by revenge, but by choosing yourself after someone else chooses destruction." And this time, he wouldn't forget who he was. The story of Lucas Grant teaches a powerful lesson about the strength found in quiet resilience and self-trust. For years, Lucas compromised in the name of love, overlooking red flags, rationalizing disrespect, and minimizing his own instincts to preserve a version of his marriage that never truly existed. But when betrayal arrived, not as a mistake, but as a calculated theft, he chose not to explode, but to observe. He responded with clarity, not chaos. Through his calm and calculated approach, Lucas discovered that true power lies not in controlling others, but in remaining grounded when deception tries to shake your foundation. More importantly, he learned that trusting yourself, your intuition, your values, your boundaries, is never wrong. Sometimes the people closest to us misuse our kindness as permission to cross lines. But strength isn't just about confrontation. It's about knowing when to let someone dig their own grave and when to walk away without looking back. In the end, Lucas didn't just escape a toxic marriage. He reclaimed his identity, rebuilt his space, and redefined what peace means on his own terms. The lesson is clear. Betrayal doesn't have to break you. If you stay rooted in truth, it can set you free.